Have you ever felt that life is whispering secrets to you? Secrets you can almost understand but not fully grasp. Imagine a point in your existence so rare, so profound, that the world you knew no longer fits. That point is reaching Sophia, the rarest awakening. Today, I'll reveal 8 things that happen when you reach this level of consciousness and why it changes everything about who you are. From the moment we are born, we are taught that control is the key to safety, happiness, and success. We are told to plan meticulously, to prepare for every contingency, to hold tightly to our routines, relationships, and possessions. And for much of our lives, we cling to these structures, believing that if we maintain a firm grip, life will conform to our expectations. Yet, reaching the awakening of Sophia reveals a profound truth. Control is never real. It is a fragile construct of the mind, a shadow we chase but can never fully capture. At first, this realization feels unsettling. For decades, the mind has been conditioned to operate under the assumption that with enough effort, enough foresight, enough discipline, we can predict, shape, and manage the unfolding of our existence. Every plan, every goal, every attempt to mold reality to our liking is, in essence, an attempt to assert dominion over a universe that does not bend to human will. When the awakening begins, you notice the subtle cracks in this illusion. The more you try to orchestrate life, the more it seems to resist. Circumstances shift in ways you cannot anticipate. People act unpredictably. Events unfold without regard for your desires. What you once held as certainty now appears fragile, like sand slipping through your fingers no matter how tightly you grasp. Yet there is a liberation hidden within this dissolution of control. When the mind begins to release the illusion, it recognizes that life is not meant to be conquered, but witnessed. Instead of forcing outcomes, you begin to attune yourself to the rhythm of existence, sensing the currents that carry each moment forward. Decisions are no longer born out of fear or obsession with results. They arise from a deep alignment with the natural flow of life. This does not mean inaction or passivity. It means acting with awareness and discernment rather than compulsion. It means learning to move with circumstances instead of against them, responding rather than reacting, participating in life as a conscious co-creator rather than a desperate manipulator. The awakening also exposes the emotional consequences of clinging to control. Every disappointment, every betrayal, every failure can be traced to the tension between desire and reality, the friction caused when expectations meet the unpredictable nature of life. When the illusion fades, a profound sense of peace emerges, not because life has become easier, but because the mind no longer fights the inevitable. It understands that suffering often comes not from events themselves, but from the insistence that the world conform to a rigid plan. In this space, acceptance does not equal resignation. It means acknowledging the impermanence and uncertainty that permeate every experience, and discovering an inner stability that is not dependent on external circumstances. As control dissolves, a subtle shift occurs in perception. You notice how much energy you previously invested in maintaining appearances, defending outcomes, or predicting the unpredictable. You begin to see that many of life's supposed emergencies are illusions, anxiety projected onto a canvas of uncertainty. The mind, once a relentless architect of scenarios and contingencies, softens its grip. In its place arises a sense of trust, not blind faith, but an intimate recognition that life has patterns, cycles, and intelligence beyond immediate comprehension. What once felt threatening now becomes instructive. Every twist, every turn, every disruption is understood as part of a larger tapestry, a lesson woven into experience, a prompt to recalibrate, release, and adapt. Gradually, the awakening reveals the paradox. True mastery is found not in control, but in surrender. Not in dictating the world to conform to our desires, but in aligning with the world's inherent wisdom. This does not diminish responsibility, it transforms it. Decisions are still made, actions are still taken, but they arise from clarity and insight rather than fear, resistance, or compulsion. Life, once a battlefield of conflicting wills, becomes a dance, a dynamic interplay between intention and surrender, effort and letting go, presence and trust. For much of our lives, just the parts of ourselves that feel uncomfortable, shameful, or unworthy. We hide our anger, suppress our fears, deny our desires, and pretend that certain aspects of our psyche do not exist. These hidden facets, the impulses, insecurities, and unresolved wounds, form what is often called the shadow. At first it seems natural to reject these aspects. Society rewards the polished, the competent, the agreeable. Yet in the rare awakening of Sophia, a profound transformation occurs. The shadow stops being an enemy and begins to reveal itself as a teacher. The moment this awakening begins, you start noticing the ways your shadow has shaped your life. You see patterns of behavior that you once called mistakes, but now recognize as unconscious guidance. The same triggers that provoke frustration, envy, or fear were often pointing toward unresolved truths within you. Every relationship that ended painfully, every internal conflict that seemed endless, every choice that brought unexpected consequences carries a message from your shadow, a hidden lesson you have been avoiding. What was once shameful or frightening now becomes a doorway into self-understanding, a mirror reflecting the parts of yourself that demand recognition. The shadow does not teach gently. Its lessons are often felt as discomfort, as the sharp sting of awareness that you have been living partially in denial. It appears in the form of recurring mistakes, toxic patterns, and emotional reactions that feel automatic and uncontrollable. At first, the instinct is to resist, to project blame outward, to search for someone or something else responsible. But as Sophia awakens, you begin to see the intimate connection between your inner resistance and the outer world's reflection. What frustrates you in others is often a projection of what you deny in yourself. What angers, saddens, or frightens you is not an external attack. It is a conversation with your own psyche, demanding attention, honesty, and integration. Integration is the ultimate gift of the shadow as teacher. Instead of suppressing anger, you learn to understand its source, to acknowledge the needs or boundaries that were previously ignored. Instead of fearing vulnerability, you explore the parts of yourself that crave connection and authentic expression. Instead of shaming desire, you recognize its role as a compass, guiding you toward passion, creativity, and purpose. The shadow reveals that the very traits you have judged, avoided, or hidden contain the seeds of transformation. Each suppressed emotion, every unexamined impulse, every buried memory holds the key to deeper awareness, a richer sense of self, and a more nuanced engagement with life. As this awakening deepens, the shadow begins to lose its power to control you unconsciously. Its lessons shift from chaos and pain to conscious understanding. You start to notice how early conditioning, societal expectations, and unresolved trauma have shaped your beliefs and reactions. You understand that fear, shame, and guilt were not inherent flaws, but signals urging attention, healing, and reclamation. You begin to respond to life with discernment rather than reactivity, with curiosity rather than judgment, with courage rather than avoidance. The shadow also teaches the art of empathy. As you recognize the parts of yourself you once denied, you begin to see them in others. You observe the insecurities, fears, and hidden wounds that drive behavior around you without judgment. The same traits that once triggered anger or disdain in you now evoke compassion. The shadow, once a source of discomfort and isolation, becomes a bridge to connection and understanding. In essence, by facing your inner darkness, you learn to recognize it universally, seeing the shared humanity in every struggle, every imperfection, and every hidden pain. The teaching of the shadow is subtle yet relentless. It demands honesty, humility, and courage. It challenges the ego's need for perfection and control, confronting illusions of identity with the raw truth of human complexity. Each confrontation Each moment of self-reflection brings insight, growth, and resilience. You realize that mastery is not the denial of your darkness, but its conscious engagement. The shadow is not an obstacle to enlightenment. It is a guide, a silent instructor, a mirror reflecting the path toward wholeness, reminding you that the richness of life is found not in avoidance, but in the fearless embrace of all that you are. If you want, I can also expand the next layer of this chapter, including vivid metaphors, psychological insights, and real-life applications that show how the shadow can transform challenges into wisdom, create a immersive 1,500-word experience. One of the most profound shifts that occurs when you reach Sophia is your perception of time itself. Suddenly, the linear, rigid structure that once governed your days, minutes, hours, deadlines begins to feel fluid, malleable, and alive. Time, which once seemed relentless and unyielding, becomes a dimension you experience rather than merely measure. Moments stretch into eternity, and entire days can collapse into fleeting flashes, revealing the hidden elasticity of existence. At first, this experience can be disorienting. You may notice that during periods of deep focus or introspection, hours pass without recognition. A single conversation, a vivid thought, or a moment of insight can contain layers of meaning that seem to encompass lifetimes. Conversely, moments that once dragged, waiting in line, enduring discomfort, sitting with boredom, can shrink, almost disappearing in the intensity of your awareness. The awakening to Sophia teaches that time is not a fixed river flowing uniformly from past to future. It is a living tapestry woven from consciousness, perception, and attention. This fluidity is tied to the mind's relationship with presence. When fully awake, the mind no longer clings to the past or rushes toward the future. Every experience is observed in its fullness, and the intensity of attention transforms ordinary moments into something sacred. A single breath, a glance, a word can contain depths previously unnoticed. Time expands because consciousness itself stretches, absorbing the subtleties, textures, and layers of reality that were once overlooked. Ordinary moments become extraordinary, and the smallest detail carries the weight of significance. Conversely, time contracts when life demands swift action or when insight strikes like lightning. Patterns, connections, and understandings emerge rapidly, compressing complex experiences into single revelatory moments. A realization can arrive fully formed, as if years of unconscious processing have converged in an instant. Memory, anticipation, and intuition converge, and you sense events unfolding simultaneously rather than sequentially. The boundaries between past, present, and future blur, and the linear chronology that once dominated your perception no longer applies in the same way. This experience of temporal fluidity also illuminates the nature of growth and transformation. Moments of struggle, reflection, and learning can feel simultaneously immediate and eternal. A period of self-confrontation may stretch in awareness, revealing layers of insight that seem to unfold across lifetimes. Conversely, profound clarity or joy can arrive suddenly, as if compressed into a single heartbeat, yet resonating far beyond that fleeting interval. The elasticity of time mirrors the elasticity of consciousness itself. The more present, the more expansive, the more attuned to subtle patterns, the more alive each moment becomes. As time expands and contracts, life begins to reveal its intricate architecture. Patterns of synchronicity, repetition, and resonance become visible. You notice how events that seem disconnected are intricately linked, how lessons recur across decades, and how moments of insight echo experiences from distant memory. The past is no longer a rigid record, but a living resource. The future is no longer a source of anxiety. Why but a landscape of potential informed by present awareness? In this state, every action, thought, and feeling acquires weight, and every moment is pregnant with meaning. The contraction and expansion of time also deepen your relationship with presence. You begin to inhabit each moment fully, understanding that consciousness itself stretches and contracts with attention and awareness. Life becomes a dynamic interplay between duration and intensity, between waiting and immediacy, between reflection and action. The mind learns to navigate these shifts with grace, recognizing that the sensation of time is inseparable from the depth of perception, the clarity of insight, and the willingness to engage with life in its full, unmediated reality. Ultimately, the experience of time in this awakening challenges every assumption you once held. The rigidity of schedules, the urgency of deadlines, the tyranny of chronological measurement, all give way to a deeper rhythm, a pulse of existence that moves in response to consciousness rather than clockwork. Every moment is both fleeting and infinite, ordinary and profound, and your awareness stretches to encompass the paradox of experiencing eternity within the briefest heartbeat and the brevity within the vast expanse of now. One of the most transformative shifts that occurs when you reach Sophia is the emergence of radical authenticity. This is not the casual authenticity of social media posts or carefully curated self-expression. This is an authenticity so profound that it reshapes every aspect of your life. It is the courage to exist in alignment with your deepest truth, to let go of facades, masks, and the roles you have been playing to satisfy expectation, approval, or comfort. Suddenly, the illusions that once provided safety and acceptance feel unbearable, and you realize that compromise of the soul is no longer possible. Radical authenticity begins internally, with a refusal to deny any aspect of your inner world. Every feeling, desire, and thought becomes worthy of acknowledgement. Where once you might have hidden anger, shame, or vulnerability, now you observe these emotions with openness and curiosity. You recognize the subtle ways you have conformed to social norms or the expectations of others, and you begin to question every habit, pattern, and relationship that has been rooted in fear rather than truth. It is not a sudden rebellion against the world, but a deliberate alignment with self, a commitment to live without inner fragmentation or concealment. This awakening brings clarity to relationships. People and situations that once felt comfortable or necessary are now seen for what they truly are. Some connections naturally deepen, reflecting mutual respect for authenticity, while others dissolve, revealing themselves as incompatible with the new level of presence you inhabit. The courage to be fully authentic often provokes discomfort, not only in yourself as you confront long-held fears and insecurities, but also in those around you who have relied on the old patterns of performance and pretense. Authenticity has a magnetic quality. It attracts those who resonate with truth and repels what is no longer aligned with your essence. Radical authenticity also manifests in choices and life paths. The career, the location, the daily habits that once seemed practical or expected may no longer serve your deeper purpose. You begin to notice the subtle dissonance between who you are and what you do, and a willingness emerges to make difficult decisions that honor your inner alignment. This does not mean reckless abandonment of responsibility, but a careful discernment guided by an unshakable connection to your own truth. Each choice becomes a reflection of integrity, a conscious expression of the inner life you have cultivated. As radical authenticity deepens, you also develop a heightened tolerance for discomfort. Living in alignment with your truth often challenges external expectations and cultural norms. Fear, doubt, and social pressure arise, yet they no longer dictate your actions. You discover that authenticity requires courage, not charisma, and that the inner voice of integrity is louder than any external validation. Each act of truthful expression strengthens the connection to self, reinforcing the understanding that living inauthentically, even for acceptance or security, is a far greater source of suffering than the vulnerability of honesty. This authenticity also transforms self-perception. You no longer measure your value by external accolades, comparisons, or achievements. Instead, value is measured by fidelity to inner truth, the courage to face shadows, and the willingness to embrace imperfection. Flaws, contradictions, and uncertainties are no longer liabilities to hide. They are part of the intricate mosaic of your being, essential threads in the tapestry of your existence. Radical authenticity is therefore inseparable from self-compassion. You cannot fully reveal yourself without first accepting the totality of who you are. The emerging E of authenticity also shifts your perception of influence and power. You begin to see that real influence is not exercised through manipulation, performance, or control, but through presence, integrity, and transparency. The energy once spent maintaining appearances is liberated and redirected toward creation, connection, and meaningful engagement. Others respond to this energy intuitively. It is a force that communicates without words, that inspires without instruction, and that fosters resonance on levels deeper than rational understanding. In this state, authenticity becomes a lived practice, not a philosophical ideal. Every thought, feeling, and action is filtered through the lens of truth. Pretense becomes impossible, compromise is carefully considered, and alignment is uncompromising. Life transforms from a series of performances into a canvas for genuine expression, each moment an opportunity to embody the full spectrum of your being, to honor the inner voice that has always sought recognition, and to allow the outer world to mirror the coherence and integrity that now radiates from within. One of the most profound awakenings that occurs when you reach Sophia is the recognition that silence is not emptiness. It is presence, intelligence, and communication all at once. In a world dominated by noise, chatter, and endless stimulation, silence can feel uncomfortable or even threatening. Yet in this rare awakening, silence becomes the language of truth, a conduit through which wisdom, insight, and understanding flow more clearly than any spoken word ever could. At first you begin to notice the moments when the mind quiets naturally, during a walk, while gazing at the sky in the stillness between breaths and the clarity that arises there. These moments reveal layers of perception previously hidden beneath the clutter of thought. Decisions that once required extensive deliberation now emerge effortlessly. Emotions that once overwhelmed you are observed and understood with a calm detachment. In the quiet, patterns in life become visible. Relationships unfold with greater depth, and subtle guidance from within begins to surface. It is in these silent spaces that consciousness expands, revealing connections and truths that words alone could never capture. Silence also transforms the way you relate to others. Conversations, once dominated by the need to explain, persuade, or perform, become opportunities to listen deeply, not just to words, but to the unspoken currents of emotion and intention. You sense what is present beneath the surface, the hesitations, the longing, the fear, the unarticulated truth, and respond with a subtlety that transcends language. In this way, silence becomes a bridge, fostering understanding and connection that words alone often obscure. In addition, silence cultivates inner authority. When you no longer feel compelled to fill every pause with speech, when you resist the urge to justify or defend yourself constantly, you discover a groundedness that radiates without effort. Presence becomes your statement. Being becomes your communication. People sense it intuitively. The quiet confidence that emerges from within conveys far more than arguments, explanations, or instructions ever could. In this way, silence is not passive. It is potent, magnetic, and deeply persuasive, a form of expression rooted in integrity rather than performance. The awakening to silence also shifts your relationship with thought itself. Previously, the mind's incessant chatter often felt essential to understanding, problem-solving, and survival, yet as you attune to the stillness, you notice that thought is a tool, not the source of all knowledge. Insights emerge between thoughts, intuition arises in the gaps, and wisdom is accessed not through analysis alone, but through attentive receptivity. The less you try to control or manipulate experience through words and concepts, the more the truth of each situation reveals itself naturally, effortlessly, and clearly. Silence also deepens emotional perception. In quietude, emotions are no longer muffled by distraction or suppressed by constant activity. They can be fully felt, observed, and integrated. The subtle shifts of energy, the nuances of connection, and the unspoken currents of relational dynamics become visible. In this space, Understanding flows directly into empathy and discernment, allowing you to respond in alignment with truth rather than habit, reaction, or expectation. Moreover, silence is a crucible for transformation. It challenges the ego's need for validation, its reliance on performance, and its fear of emptiness. In the absence of words, masks fall away, pretenses dissolve, and what remains is the raw, unfiltered self. In this space, self-deception cannot survive. You confront your deepest fears, your unspoken desires, and the patterns that have unconsciously guided your life. This confrontation is not violent or judgmental. It is an intimate dialogue with your own being, a space where clarity and insight arise naturally. The more you cultivate the power of silence, the more it permeates every aspect of life. Decision-making, creativity, relationships, and intuition all benefit from this deepened awareness. You begin to recognize that the loudest truths often speak without sound, the wisdom that guides action, the insight that illuminates complexity, the connection that fosters understanding. These all arise from a place beyond words, a space where presence itself communicates more fully than any explanation, instruction, or argument ever could. One of the most fascinating experiences of reaching Sophia is the sudden awareness that life is not random, that events are not isolated, and that the universe communicates in subtle, often astonishing ways. This is the world of synchronicity, where coincidences become meaningful, where encounters, signs, and patterns seem orchestrated by a guiding intelligence. Before this awakening, moments that aligned perfectly were often dismissed as luck or chance. After this rare shift, you begin to recognize that these alignments are signals, invitations, and confirmations, pointing you toward a deeper understanding of yourself and the world around you. The multiplication of synchronicities often begins subtly. You may notice repeating numbers, songs that play at pivotal moments, unexpected encounters with strangers who offer exactly the guidance you need, or events that unfold in ways that defy logical explanation. At first, it can seem coincidental, almost trivial. Yet over time, the pattern becomes undeniable. Life itself appears to be speaking, creating a dialogue that is both personal and universal. Every interaction, every occurrence, no matter how small, begins to feel intentional, carrying layers of meaning beyond the surface. This heightened perception is tied to the expansion of awareness that comes with Sophia. As your consciousness deepens, you become more attuned to patterns and connections that were previously invisible. The boundaries between events blur, and you notice the intricate web of cause and effect that stretches across time and space. What once felt like random moments are now understood as part of a greater choreography, a dynamic interplay between intention, attention, and the unseen currents of life. Synchronicities multiply in both subtle and dramatic ways. You may find that thoughts you hold strongly in your mind manifest externally in unexpected forms. A question you have been wrestling with may suddenly be answered by a casual conversation, a book you randomly pick up, or even a fleeting headline. Decisions that once required extensive planning now unfold organically, guided by signs that you intuitively follow. This sense of being in the right place at the right time becomes a recurring reality, a testament to the alignment between inner awareness and external events. This phenomenon also transforms relationships. Encounters with certain people no longer feel coincidental. Individuals appear in your life precisely when their presence is needed for growth, reflection, or collaboration. The timing of these meetings, the circumstances that bring them together, and the insights they offer all carry a subtle orchestration that goes beyond random chance. You begin to recognize that the universe has its own rhythm, one that works in harmony with your awareness, providing guidance and support through the very fabric of everyday experience. As synchronicities increase, the perception of control shifts. The awakening teaches that while planning and intention are important, there is a deeper intelligence guiding the flow of events. Life ceases to feel like a series of obstacles and accidents. Instead, it becomes a coherent narrative, a tapestry of meaning that you are simultaneously part of and guided by. This does not remove responsibility, it enhances discernment. You learn to notice the signs, interpret them, and act with awareness, allowing life to lead you without surrendering your agency. The awareness of synchronicity also cultivates trust. You begin to understand that when life appears random, it is only because the patterns are subtle and layered. The repeated coincidences are invitations to pause, reflect, and engage more deeply with the unfolding moment. Each event becomes a lesson, each encounter a mirror. Each pattern a reminder that consciousness is actively participating in the creation of reality. You notice the harmony in seeming chaos, the order within apparent randomness, and the intelligence behind events that once seemed disconnected. Ultimately, the multiplication of synchronicities transforms perception itself. You begin to see life as an interconnected web of meaning, where guidance, insight, and opportunity arise continually, often in ways that surpass expectation. The world no longer feels arbitrary. It feels alive, responsive, and engaged with your consciousness. The more attuned you become, the more you notice the delicate orchestration that exists beneath everyday reality, the subtle nudges that steer you toward growth, understanding, and fulfillment, and the intricate ongoing dialogue between your inner world and the universe at large. One of the most profound transformations that occurs when you reach Sophia is the awakening of compassion that no longer originates from ego or obligation, but flows naturally, effortlessly, and universally. This is a type of empathy that does not cling, judge, or seek reward. It is an expansive awareness of the suffering, joy, and complexity of others, paired with a recognition of the interconnectedness of all beings. Before this awakening, compassion was often filtered through the lens of self-interest, social expectation, or personal comfort. After this rare shift, it becomes a state of being, a natural resonance with life itself. This form of compassion begins internally. As you face your own shadows, fears, and vulnerabilities, you develop an intimate understanding of the human condition. You recognize the patterns of pain and struggle that exist within yourself, and by extension, you see them mirrored in others. Where once you may have judged weaknesses in yourself or others, you now understand that every flaw, fear, and failure is part of a greater story, a story of growth, learning, and adaptation. The realization that suffering is universal cultivates humility, patience, and a gentleness that was previously inaccessible to the ego-bound mind. Compassion transcending ego is not passive. It does not mean indulgence or interference, nor does it equate to pity. Instead, it is an active engagement with presence, understanding, and discernment. You are able to feel deeply for others without becoming entangled in their emotions. You offer support, guidance, and understanding when appropriate, but without attachment, expectation, or the need for recognition. Your actions are guided by awareness rather than impulse, by intention rather than compulsion. This allows compassion to function as a force of clarity and transformation, rather than a reactive habit of attachment or obligation. This awakening also transforms relationships in profound ways. Interactions become less transactional and more authentic. You notice the unspoken needs, the hidden struggles, and the subtle emotions that influence others' behavior. Instead of reacting to surface-level appearances or actions, you engage with the underlying truth, recognizing the humanity behind every word and gesture. Conflicts are approached with insight rather than defensiveness. Misunderstandings are navigated with patience rather than judgment. In this way, compassion becomes a bridge, creating connection and understanding where before there was separation or resistance. As compassion transcends ego, it also transforms how you perceive power and influence. Each desire to control, manipulate, or dominate others loses its appeal because you recognize that true impact is achieved through presence, empathy, and integrity. Leadership, guidance, and service are no longer about authority or recognition. They are about alignment with universal principles, sensitivity to the needs of others, and the ability to respond with clarity, care, and discernment. You see that helping someone does not require sacrificing yourself. and that true influence emerges from authenticity and resonance, not coercion or performance. This heightened state of compassion also deepens your connection to life itself. You notice the subtle interconnections between beings, the ripple effects of action and intention, and the way energy moves through every encounter. Small gestures previously overlooked gain profound significance. Words, expressions, and even silence are recognized as carriers of emotional and energetic weight. You learn to respond in a way that honors the wholeness of life, fostering balance and harmony in interactions and situations that were once fraught with friction or misunderstanding. Compassion in this awakening is inseparable from wisdom. It is not indiscriminate kindness, nor is it blind tolerance. It carries discernment, clarity, and the ability to navigate complexity without attachment or judgment. You can recognize harm, injustice, or imbalance without resentment or aggression, responding with measured awareness and constructive guidance. Your understanding of human nature becomes nuanced, allowing you to see the causes of suffering, the potential for growth, and the pathways toward resolution, all while remaining rooted in equanimity and inner peace. Over time, the awakening of compassion that transcends ego becomes a natural, effortless way of being. It no longer requires conscious effort or moral striving, because it arises from a deep alignment with truth, presence, and interconnectedness. You notice how this compassion affects the world subtly yet profoundly. Relationships, circumstances, and environments begin to shift in response to this presence, revealing that empathy grounded in awareness has a transformative effect beyond the individual. One of the most subtle yet transformative aspects of reaching Sophia is the awakening to a form of responsibility that is profound, conscious, and liberating. Responsibility without attachment. Most of life teaches responsibility as obligation, a weight carried with anxiety, fear, or compulsion. From a young age, we are conditioned to act correctly, to meet expectations, to protect outcomes, and to derive identity from the results of our efforts. Yet in the rare awakening of Sophia, responsibility is understood in an entirely new dimension, one that is aligned with awareness, presence, and the natural flow of life, rather than with egoic control or fear. This form of responsibility begins internally. Recognize that your actions, intentions, and presence carry weight, not because they are demanded by others, but because every choice resonates within the interconnected web of existence. Your awareness expands to see how even small acts, thoughts, or words ripple outward, affecting circumstances, relationships, and energies in ways both visible and unseen. Yet, unlike conventional responsibility, there is no grasping or clinging to outcomes. The focus shifts from controlling results to honoring intention and integrity, from forcing life to conform to your plans to guiding life with conscious participation. Responsibility without attachment also requires discernment. It is not an excuse for passivity or avoidance. You act decisively when necessary, intervene when aligned, and contribute to where your presence matters, but always without imposing egoic desire or expectation. The pressure to manipulate or force outcomes fades, replaced by a clarity of purpose that is grounded in alignment rather than compulsion. You learn to distinguish between action that serves truth and action that serves the fear of inadequacy, the desire for recognition, or the need for control. This discernment is essential because responsibility without attachment is not avoidance, it is intelligent engagement. This awakening transforms relationships in profound ways. You no longer feel compelled to fix, save, or micromanage others. Support, guidance, and influence arise naturally, rooted in awareness, understanding, and empathy, not in attachment or fear. You recognize that each person's journey is their own, and that over-involvement or coercion often hinders growth rather than fosters it. Yet responsibility is still honored through presence, example, and conscious contribution. You act when appropriate, guide when needed, and respond when required, but without the egoic expectation that your intervention must produce a specific outcome. Over time, this principle extends to life itself. Work, creativity, relationships, and even societal engagement are approached with a balance of effort and detachment. You honor commitments, maintain integrity, and respond to the demands of life. Yet you release the illusion that results are solely under your control. There is a profound freedom in this understanding. You carry responsibility fully while remaining unbound by the anxieties and frustrations that accompany attachment. You operate from a place of alignment, acting in resonance with the natural flow rather than against it, allowing life to unfold while contributing your conscious energy where it matters most. The awakening also redefines leadership and influence. True guidance is no longer imposed through force, authority, or manipulation. It emerges through presence, example, and alignment with universal principles. People respond not to pressure, obligation, or coercion, but to the coherence, integrity, and calm authority that comes from responsibility without attachment. Decisions are made with clarity, insight, and awareness, and actions are undertaken with intention rather than compulsion. The results, though significant, are not clutched or feared. They are allowed to exist as part of a larger unfolding, a dynamic interplay of effort and flow. This understanding reshapes perception of personal power. You realize that true power is not in controlling others or outcomes, but in engaging fully, consciously, and responsibly with life, while maintaining freedom from attachment. Energy that was once expended in worry, micromanagement, or fear is now liberated for creation, reflection, and contribution. Itself becomes an act of responsibility, a subtle influence that shapes circumstances without interference, a force that harmonizes rather than dominates. Responsibility without attachment also cultivates resilience. You accept that outcomes are influenced by countless factors beyond your immediate control, and yet this does not diminish your agency. Every act, every decision, every effort is taken fully, with awareness and integrity, and then released from the need for affirmation, success, or validation. You become a conscious participant in life, fully accountable for your role while simultaneously liberated from the tyranny of results.